Welcome to What No One Knows, the podcast that tells the secret behind the published books, hosted by Lisa Marie Garcia, the Chief Operating Officer of Now Publishing, a full-service book publishing and author PR firm. Through the years in the publishing industry, we've heard the statement over and over, "This is what no one knows," when we interview would-be authors wishing to tell their story. This is what this podcast is all about. And now to our podcast and our host, Lisa Marie Garcia.
Hello, this is Lisa Marie Garcia for Now Publishing, and thank you for listening to another episode of What No One Knows. Super excited this morning to have in studio our guest, Erica DiAngelo. And before I bring her on the show, I'm going to actually read something that we saw out there that she wrote, and I just loved it. So I'm going to share as an intro to bringing her on the show. So in her words, she wrote, "As an entrepreneur at heart, I wasn't going to be satisfied being just another lawyer out there doing the same old song and dance. I felt like I didn't fit into that stereotypical mold anyway, so I did something different. I created DiAngelo Law to operate virtually and equipped to serve clients around the county to be able to provide busy entrepreneurs with an efficient, less stressful, less intimidating, yet still high quality option for getting the legal representation they need." So we're going to talk more with Erica this morning. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining our podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to do this.
Well, we're excited. I'm definitely excited to share with you what I know from you. Now, we met a little bit ago, and I really, as a business owner now for, I don't know if I should date myself, I want to think like 25 years or something. It is, I think, very hard to find good legal representation for business owners, for entrepreneurs that understand the plights and the challenges and that of business owners and entrepreneurs from that legal side. So I was very happy to meet you. And right away I said, let's get together so I can pick your brain and I can understand more about what you do. So would you let our listeners understand how you decided, hey, this is the area of law that I'd like to practice?
Sure. So it definitely wasn't just a straightforward thing. I didn't wake up and decide that I'm going to be a business and trademark lawyer. I actually went to law school, thought I wanted to be in family law, and I worked in that for a year after I started practicing. And when I left to open my own firm, I was doing a lot of litigation, and my biggest client was a business. And a lot of what we were doing was fighting about contracts and fighting about things that could have been prevented if the proper legal representation was there from the beginning when the business was getting set up. So that's kind of what started me down this path of saying, why don't I help businesses prevent all this trouble and prevent spending this money and fighting. And then as I started diving into that and being here in the Tampa area with all these startups and entrepreneurs, I started to see, whoa, there's other things that they need help with too, including trademarks. And now trademark is the biggest part of my practice and one of the most overlooked legal areas for business owners.
Right. And I do want to dig into the trademarks, especially we're going to talk about how that pertains to the authors that are listening and the writers. But I want to ask you a question regarding what would you say is one of the most common missteps that a new business owner, a new entrepreneur makes as they're starting this, I call it that 5-year journey of really, that's the 5-year boot camp, right? I don't know what percentage, but it's very, very high, right? The businesses don't make it to their 5-year. What would you say is one of the maybe the top 2 common mistakes that you've seen or missteps that a business owner or entrepreneur will make regarding setting their business up correctly?
Sure. So one of those things I think is just thinking that you don't need contracts in place and that handshake deals are going to be okay because you guys are getting along now or whatever the case may be. And you just don't get that in writing because you don't want to spend the money. I understand bootstrapping and being on a budget when you're starting a new business. I did it myself. So I get it, but there's just no substitute. And I can go into a little bit more about some of the types of contracts that really can come around to bite you in the butt if you don't get them. And then the other thing is people love to think of a business and name it before doing any due diligence on whether that name is actually going to be protectable, whether they're infringing on somebody else. And there's a lot of misconceptions around what that means and what is actually available. And a lot of people think if they just go register an LLC with the Secretary of State that they are now protected, but that is definitely not how it works.
Such something really to think about, because I had to laugh because for this company, we had a very difficult time naming Now SE Press, and it was like Now Press Agency is how we started. We went through a name change, but the whole idea of name, it is interesting that you say that that's one of the common missteps, because it's such that, all important, what are we going to call ourselves? What will we brand? What will the logo look like around the name? So it's so important to get that message out that it's more than that and the significant. So let's talk about then, why is it important to trademark, to research the name? I mean, and also please let our listeners know how you help that, what you do for that process, because I do believe this is an area that is overlooked.
Sure. So let me just back up a little bit and explain what a trademark is, because people hear patent, copyright, trademark, and sometimes the lines are blurred and people aren't sure, what it is that each of them mean. So trademark is what protects your brand. So the name of your business or brand, the logo, anything that indicates to consumers the source of that product or service that you're offering. Okay, that's what a trademark is. And so in the business world, it's super important. You're building a business, you're building goodwill, and all of that is attached to the name of your business. Do people change their logo? Absolutely. But presumably you're investing into this name and you're trying to get name recognition. So you really need to protect that name. And the way to do that is through trademark. Now, you can't just register your trademark and say, okay, that's it, I'm protected. That's the difference with an LLC. As long as somebody doesn't have the exact same name, then you're good to go and you register it. But an LLC or a corporation or whatever entity you file with your state, that's really just a method of tracking you and your taxes. Okay, that doesn't have anything to do with your brand or anything outward that you're putting out into the marketplace for consumers to buy your services or products. So what I do is I help business owners or aspiring business owners. It's preferred to help aspiring ones, because coming to me before you lock down a name and invest into the brand is always better. But since a lot of people don't know that, they come to me afterwards. And either way, I help them through the trademark process. I start with a search, and this isn't just an internet search where you go onto Google or even onto the trademark office website. We have advanced software, algorithms similar to what the Federal Trademark Office uses. So we get all kinds of results. And then we come through them and we basically let these business owners know what their risk is and whether we think they should pursue that trademark or not. And sometimes the answer is, I'm sorry that you've been in business for 5, 10, 20 years, but you need to change your name because you're now infringing on somebody else. And nobody likes to hear that. But so that's what I do. And so then I take the people through the trademark process, which is very technical and nuanced, and it takes about a year. So that's kind of the gist of what I do. I know there was kind of a lot of questions packed into that one question. So let me know, which route you want me to take it.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, as you said, it's a year process, so that lets people understand there's a lot of elements in there. I would ask you, what comes to my mind in questioning and listening to what you have to say is, what has been, one of the biggest risks or biggest difficulties that you've seen in your career so far, or that might have happened had, you not been able to be there to help protect that business owner? Just to share maybe a story or something that you've seen or experienced.
Sure. So I've seen all kinds of scenarios, good and bad. And the truth is, there are some situations where you can get to a point where I can't fix it for you. I can't help you out of it. If you have invested into this name and somebody else has superior rights to you, the bottom line is you're going to have to change it. So those situations are unfortunate, but there's been other times where I've noticed something early on and I'm like, okay, we need to push for this. We need to oppose this other person's trademark because they're coming in trying to get something very similar and we don't want any confusion or any dispute. I have one client right now, and of course I can't go into too much detail because of confidentiality, but she has started basically a movement, and it's also a business. She sells resources and then she's going to sell like merchandise and stuff as well. But when she started it, there was somebody else out there who came and said, this is my trademark. And she looked it up, and of course he doesn't have a trademark registration, but he's also not using it in commerce. He's actually not selling anything. He just like claimed in his mind that this was his. Right. So with that said, that's when you like have to act fast. So we filed for the trademarks as many, as broadly as we could, as many different ways and variations as we could. He shortly thereafter filed. He's trying to use a different date of first use that's earlier than hers, which is a lie, which is fraud. Okay. But then we have to then act in response to that. And so we have to tell the trademark office that we oppose this, that we were protesting this application. And then we had to file even more applications because as she expands, we don't want him to then file for the merchandise, right, rather than the service she's providing. And then she's stuck where she doesn't have rights to the merchandise. So, we had to be really strategic about that because, a lot of situations when people are brand new, she started within the past 6 months, okay, brand new, and things are picking up fast. And so it happens where you get haters or you get copycats. It also happens where people aren't intentionally copying, and that's more common. People just have good ideas, and we live in a global world with internet, and it doesn't matter if you're in California and Florida or any state in the country. If you're using the same name or a similar name, it's going to be a problem. So knowing what your options are and when it's important to act is super important. And if you're not educated as a trademark lawyer, you probably don't know what you don't know.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to segue here a little bit in terms of, as I had said, we have a number of authors that listen to this podcast, self-published, and then those authors that are with Now Publishing. Can we talk about the differences between copyright and trademark? Of course, we're concerned about making sure that our, manuscripts are copyrighted. Can you share a little bit, kind of break that down for our listeners regarding copyrights?
Sure. So we talked about trademark, and trademark indicates the source of the good or product or service, right? But copyright is more about the context itself, the deliverable. So in the example you used, a book. And the good thing about copyright is that there are some automatic rights that happen when you create something and you put it into tangible form. So like if you type out your book, it doesn't have to be published for you to have copyright protection. The second you write it, you have some level of protection. Now, getting federal registration of that copyright is a different story, and it gives you a lot of benefits. And if you do it within a shorter time frame, you actually get additional benefits. You have additional recourse. So if somebody does infringe, then you have rights to recover attorney's fees in some instances, and you have it's a easier burden of proof, right? So you just get a lot more ease of monitoring that and enforcing that against others. So especially when it comes to books or things like that, where you're going to be, putting it out there and wanting people to buy it, I definitely recommend getting copyright registration. But I know it's a lot to take in, so I will say if you're creating blogs and you're doing various things where you're creating, know that you do have some automatic protection there, because I understand it would be difficult to protect everything. I will say that there's a new procedure, and I'm not very familiar with it. I haven't encountered it yet. It just came out in the past 2 months, But there's now a way that you can copyright several content at once. So like if you have a blog and you have multiple blogs on your website, you can actually kind of package it all together. And so it really saves a lot of money with filing fees. So I would say people who aren't necessarily writing a book, but they're doing other things